Hello friends and everyone, you are all welcome back to Netcode-Hub channel. In this video, we are going to talk about how to create a recipe mobile application. We have done another mini project for the same topic here, but this time around, we made that to web app. Now this video is about mobile app. So you're going to create this and you can now publish this as an Android app or as an iOS app whereby you can install on mobile device or a desktop and access it. So as you can see from the screen, I have done this already and that is what you're going to go through today. It's the same as what we did in the mobile, that is the web app version. So if you check here, you can see that is the recipes home. We have the list of recipes. I just grab these images from the internet and I'll grab some types and some names or titles of these recipes and some descriptions. So that is what I have few over here. As you can see, the images are not in the same size. Yeah, maybe you can actually do that if you want to do it. Now, if I click on any of these, let's see. So you can see that now in here we have the recipe name over here. Now we have recipe description, we have recipe origin, and we have recipe procedures. So we have only two steps for now, step 1 and step 2. With each step it has its own description that you can actually read through. Okay, now this is just a mini project and that is what we're going to have a look today. Aside from that, you can also return. And you can add origin, you can add recipe, and also you can add procedure. So when you go to the origins, you can see we can now go in there and now add a list of countries, and that is the origin where you can have these recipes from. You click on this add origin, and you're going to have a pop-up here whereby you're going to add an origin. So you can pass in the name as, let's say I have Ghana here, and I can click on save. And as soon as I'm done with that, you can see completed and I have Ghana added here. Now, aside from that, if I go to manage recipes, I can go in there and now add recipe to it. Now, you can see from here, we are using Syncfusion data grid. Okay. And as you can see, we can just scroll up to the whole page and then see what we have in there. Okay. Also, we can make this selection here, this drop down. You're going to have a whole list over here. So as soon as I choose on the first one, I have the recipe related to this country only. And if I choose the next one, I'm going to have this recipe related to this origin only. Okay, aside from that, I can just click on this and I'm going to have, do you want to edit or delete it? If I click on edit, I can now have a pop-up here whereby I can say, you can see that we have the image over here. I can edit this and I'll click on save. Also, if I want to add a new one, I can click on add a new recipe and I have this dialog box whereby I can add a recipe to this and I'll add an image as well. The image is going to be converted to be image 64 string and that's what you're going to save into our data base. Alright, as soon as I go to procedures 2, you can see from here that we can now go in there and add procedure, or we can click on this to select a specific procedure related to a recipe. So you can see we have the whole list of recipes added over here. And as soon as I make a change here, you will see it's going to affect the table and I get the current recipes or current procedures related to this specific recipe. Also, if I click on the next one, Scottish one, you can see I have nothing over here. And if I click on, let's say, the next one, I have nothing. Okay, so that is what you're going to have a look today. Okay, so here we have two. And now with the Irish, you can see we have one over here. You can also click on add procedure and you can see you're going to have the procedure title. You can now select the recipe from this. Okay. Then aside from that, you can choose the procedure number. You specify the time that it needs to be done. And also you can add description and I'll click on save. All right. So this video or this lesson is going to introduce you to how to perform database normalization, that is grouping tables and linking them together. So you're going to use an SQLite and you're going to create, I think, 3 tables and we're going to have a relationship between them, so we can grab the tables or the data related to a specific one, whereby we refer to the key as a foreign key in another table in there. All right, so let's start something here, and let's try to create this very simple program. It's a very simple application that we are doing. As I said earlier on, I have the web app, so check the description, and I'm going to leave the link over there. And now this is the mobile app. It is the same context that you're working towards on, okay? But just that this is going to be a mobile app, and what we did earlier on is going to be the web application. All right, so I have the code already, so I'm going to make it fast, and I'm going to just copy and paste. Okay, so I just have time to explain, then we move on. So I want to skip all typing at a time. I want to skip so we can actually go fast enough. And aside from this, I'll leave this code at the GitHub, so check the description, and I'll put the link over there. You can just go in there and clone the project and review later on. All right, so I'm going to stop everything here. Okay, so I'll go back to the home, and I have everything as you can see. So I'm going to stop this, and now let's create a new project for this. So launch a Visual Studio, and now in here I'm going to create a new project, and that's going to be demo Maui. So the name is going to be demo Maui food recipe app. Okay, so let's create a new project for that. All right, so demo Maui food recipe. I'm going to click on next. The same framework version that I've chosen. So create. So after creating this project, there are some packages that we need to install because you're going to work on SQLite database. So let's do that. And I'm going to go to my Solution Explorer, and in here I'll just unload this project. Then in here where we have this item group, I'm going to paste this. So pause this video, and I'll try to install these packages here. We have SQLite, PCL, extension.async, and we have all this 2k.Maui and also MVVM. So you make sure you install these packages. Aside from installing these packages, there are also some packages such as the Syncfusion component packages, and that is what we also have to install because you're going to be using them, such as the SF dialog box, SF message, or SF pop-up navigation. So you're going to be using this component. So let's get this package ready into application, then we move on. So with this one too, let's install these packages as well. And you can see that we need Syncfusion.Maui.call, we need refactor.mvn helpers, and we need the Syncfusion.data grid input and also pop-up. So please pause the video and I'll try to install these packages, then we move on. So I'll save this. So I'll just reload this project with dependencies, and I'm going to just install all this because I have them already. I have them from the previous project, so I need not to reinstall them again. I just have to copy the references and I include them here, and I reload the project and I have them installed. So if I go to dependencies, maybe it's reloading. So let's see, Solution Explorer, dependencies, and if I go to manage NuGet packages, I'm going to have all these packages installed from here. Yeah, so you can see that I have these two packages installed. I have these also ones installed as well. All right, so now we are done with this. We can just close this peacefully, and let's try to build the whole project and see what is happening. So if it works, then we're going to move on to the next stage. So build solution, and I will wait while the build the project is being built. Now you can see that we have an error here. We have to register this service into the program.cs file. So let's do that to escape these errors while building. So go to my program.cs file, and in here we are going to add the use Maui community toolkit and also configure Syncfusion call. Maybe we have to add some namespaces, so control period. Let's try to add the namespaces here. So use community toolkit.maui, and also this is using Blazor, maui.core.hosting. Alright, so here we can just go in there and try to rebuild this project and see. So build a solution again, and then let's wait for this to be built and see the results here. Alright, so you can see that here it is telling us that one succeeded. Now let's try to build this and run this on the window machine so we can see if everything is working as expected. So we click on this, we choose this Windows machine, and now let's run this project and see. Alright, so you can see that it is working and everything is set now. So we can now go ahead and then create our project now. Okay, so the very first thing that we're going to do here is we want to create our service, and this service is going to be a recipe service where we're going to have an interface and its implementation class. We did that in the web application, and we're doing the same thing here as well, because we're going to interact with that database and we're going to have a service to do that. The service here, aside from creating this service, we have to create our models or our entities. Then this is what's going to be used to create a database table and 8 column names or field name. Okay, and creating this table, we are going to apply some relationship over here, like one to many or many to many. No, that's a many to one. Okay, we're going to do that as well. So let's start do that. Let's first create our models first. So we have to create a folder here, and let's name this folder as maybe models. Yeah, the models will work. So let me close this. And in Solution Explorer, I click on the project and I create a new folder as models. Okay, so after this models, we want to create some class. Now the first class I want to create here is going to be the origin. That's the name that I'm giving to my classes. Okay, I'm saying origin. This origin represents country that the recipe originates from. So I say origin. So in this origin model, what are the properties that I want to have? The first thing to do here is let's specify the table name. So we want to put it on top here. So we are telling the SQL database that here we want to specify the table name as origin. Here is going to be public, and we can get rid of all of this. So here we need to add, you can see this is just the property. Okay, it's an attribute. So to do that, control period, let's use this SQL component model dot data annotation dot schema, and this is fixed now. Alright, so aside from that, let's see, we want to have a model which comprises of 3 properties. The first one going to be the ID, the name, and the list of recipe. So that's where you create the relationship here. Now you can see we are saying that we want to use this as a primary key, that's an ID, and it should auto increment. Aside from that, we can see from the name section, we are setting this name, and we also specify the list, so that the relationship comes in here. We're creating a list of this. It means that we are calling that's one to many. So one origin here is going to have many recipes. Okay, and this to make it to get this SQLite database aware. So that's why we pass in the relationship name here as one to many. And in order to get the whole data, as soon as we make a query from this recipe or this origin, we have to actually add this cascade operation to, that is a OR. It means you want to grab all the data with their children, their grandchildren, etc. Every related data record which is linked to this by a foreign key should be retrieved. Alright, so in here we have this set. Now we have to create this model as recipe. So let's go to Solution Explorer, the same place. We're going to create another class and we're going to name this as recipe. So with this recipe class, we also want to specify some few properties for the recipe, and that is what we are doing here. You know that from here too, we have to clear this top over there, and we want to set the table name to as recipes. So let's put this on top. We specify the name as recipes, and I want to set this primary key as auto increment as we've done earlier on. So this table is going to be, we have to use component models or data annotation or something like that. You can also use SQLite extension.attribute. Okay, so maybe you can also use this using, can you have an SQLite net extensions, then we can have .attribute to as well. All right, and here we are using this because we are using this one to many to one. You see, these are the relationship here. Now this what we created, the origin. So one origin is going to have this one recipe. Okay, so only one recipe can relate to an origin. That's a country. So that's what we are creating. So here is when you check the origin, this is list. So it is one to many. So one origin to many recipe. Okay, and now here we are saying that one or recipe, okay, or a list of this recipe is related to just one origin. All right, so after having this, the next thing that we're going to do here is, let me clear this from this area. And now with this attribute, we have it set. Let's check for the origin. All right, so you can see it is set over here. And now with this recipe, I believe with this table, until period. Okay, so system, we're going to use this. So which one is supposed to use? Now, if we check this, we have using the SQLite and this. So let's call this, and now let's use, okay, so we have the SQLite there already. Okay, so we maintain that. All right, so we have this recipe created. Now let's take it up and see. There's a list of recipe, and now when you check here, this public class. When you check this recipe, it is internal, so let's make this also a public class. We save that, and let's see, this issue must be solved. So you can just namespace, you have this model, and now you can see we have this procedure that we need to resolve it. Okay, this is resolved. So let's create the last one, procedure, and let's do that from here. The same models, add a new class, and it's going to be procedure. Now inside this procedure model, we want to specify the following properties as well. So in here, we set this to public. We can now clear everything from here. And now this control period, let's use an SQLite. And now this main-to-main relationship, we're going to also use the same attribute. Okay, so this is solved. So when you look through this, the only difference here that we're making is the relationship that we are creating. You can see we could have created one giant table and now specify all these properties in. But I don't want to do that because it can create confusion and data manipulation is going to be difficult for us. That is why we are creating three different groups, and we are linking this group together. Okay, so that's a database normalization, creating tables in which have one context, grouping them, and also linking them with a foreign key as well. Okay, so you can see from here that we are specifying the foreign key as recipe ID, which means that one recipe is going to have a list of procedures. So one recipe is going to have many of this, or many of procedures going to link to one recipe, and that's the reason why we have many to one. Many procedures is going to have one recipe. Okay, now when you check here, it's going to be like many recipes going to have one origin. So when you check here, many procedures here or many recipes here is going to have one origin. So that's why I specify this many to one. Okay, good. And now we are referring to is this the foreign key type here as the origin ID. We are referring to this origin model. That's why we specify this foreign key here. Okay, and I've explained this already that this is going to enable us to get or retrieve the data, retrieve every aspect that's going to be all the related records, such as the foreign key records and any other record related to this specific table, whereby it has a relationship with that. You're going to just get this out. All right, so these are the properties that we want to have for these three models in a database, because that is what our application is going to depend on. Okay, maybe you can decide to add more, but for now you want to maintain this. Okay, so once you're done with this, the next thing that we can do is we can save all, and we can now go in there and create our services. So this service that we're going to use to interact with the database and get data as well. So I'm going to put that here. I can just right click and I'll click on add. Let's add a folder, and on this folder is going to be like services. So with services, you're going to have an iInterface service, and also you're going to have the implementation class. So choose the interface, and now we're going to say that iInterface. So that's the iRecipe service. I stands for the interface. Now this service here is going to contain all our methods that we need, and the implementation class is going to contain the method definition. So let's simplify this. Alright, so this interface that we have. Now with this interface, what are the methods that we are going to talk about? The first thing is we're going to talk about the origin or the category. Okay, so what are some of the interfaces that we're going to need under the origin? So if we check here, we see that we want to add async, we want to add origin, we want to update, we want to delete, and we want to get the list of origins. So that is what we are doing. Let's include them. Now the next thing that you want to do here is let's talk about this recipe. So the methods that you want to have for this recipe is going to be we have the same add recipe, update, delete, get recipes, and there's get recipe async. So here you can see that it is the same as get recipe by ID, and I can see from here that we have get all recipes by origin ID. So the ID from this origin, as soon as you pass through this method, we have to get all related recipes related to a specific origin that have been created. That is what you want to do. Now the last one here is going to be the procedure. So this procedure too, we're going to have get, add procedure, update, delete, and do all the stuff that we have been doing over here. And aside from that, we see we have get all procedures by recipe ID. So as soon as I specify this recipe ID, I must have all procedures or steps related to that specific recipe. As soon as I pass in this origin, I must have all the steps or all the recipe which fall under this origin of the country. Okay, so you see that we have something in common. They depend on each other for data as well. Alright, so let's save this, and now let's create a class. And this class is going to be the implementation. So it's going to be recipe service. So add a class. Now recipe service. And on this recipe service, it's going to be public. And let's claim this first. And this is going to inherit from the interface. That's the iRecipe interface. Okay, so with this, we are going to define all the method in. So you can just click Control period, and you can see that it's going to implement all the interfaces. Even if I hover the mouse on, you will see that all of these are the interfaces that is going to implement here. But we are going to just copy them and paste as we explain, then we move on. Okay, so for the first one, when we talk about, let's set our database connectivity. So we can do this. We can create a method here, and that's going to be set up database, and we can create a connection on top. Now this connection, we are going to create a constructor, and now we pass in or we inject, you call this method in here. So that is where we're going to add a constructor here. You can see that the recipe service, we call this method, and now this method, it needs this. We want to create tables async. So we are creating these three tables if these tables do not exist. Now let me just clean this recipe DB, and now let me make it as demo. So demo Maui DB, a recipe DB. Okay. Now here, control period, let's include these models that we have created. All right. So now we have this. Now, so database is now set because you see from here that we get the path of this database. We check this is the name that we are using for database. We check if this is not there, then we want to create this. So we create the table over here. But in case it is there, it means we've run the application already. We have it in a database. We have it in the application. It means you should not create it again. Okay. So that's why we are saying that you should get a connection. If connection is null, then do this. But in case connection is not null, then skip all this. All right. So let's go to the first method that we want to talk about here. And that's going to be the origin. So origin service. This origin service is going to handle with the add async. We're going to add a new model here. We check if it is null, return this bad request. If it is not, then insert it and return results. You know, there is return type here is an integer because as soon as you insert a new data in a SQLite, it returns the ID of that data. So that's how we store it to the integer and return the results. Aside from this, we can now go up to the delete async. And now for deleting, this is what we can actually pass on. We get the whole data from here and I will delete it here. Okay, so we are not checking if it is now. You can do a whole lot of stuff. So you can check if this data exists already, because for this, if this data do not exist, then I'm sure you're going to have an exception here. So you have to do this. You can maybe call a service here to check if database or if the table database contains this specific object here ID. Then you can now go ahead. Okay, so I believe you can do it as well. Now the next thing that we're going to talk about is get list. So how do you get it? You want to get a whole origin list, and that's what we see. So we get a table name and we convert it to list and I return. All right. Now the last one here, it is the update. So if I want to update, is it possible? Yes, it is. So there is a method to also update this origin. So you can see we are calling this method. These are the methods that have been specified or created inside this SQLite object. So as soon as we install these packages, you're going to have exposed to this method that we can use them. All right, so now we see that we are done with our origin service. Let's go to our recipe service and I'll do it over there. So we can do that from here, and that's going to be our recipe service. So for our recipe service, we have to first get, you see, we are doing the same thing as we did here. So there's no need for me to even talk again because it is the same thing that we are repeating it over here. So you can see just that here we have to make changes to the name and I will change them, and that's all. So that's going to be for the addition, and there's going to be for delete. So delete, and we have one for, so that's for the update, and this for the delete. So you can put delete somewhere here. That's the delete. And we have get all recipes. So we want to grab all recipe. So this method is going to grab all the recipes here. You can see we are getting the whole list. Now one thing over here is you can see that we are saying var results is equal to await connection dot get all with children async. So it means all related data or all related records which known as a foreign key in this table. As soon as you make a call to this, it's going to go in there and now grab them. You know, when using C# you have to use the keyword as include. So here, instead of using that include, we're going to use this get all with children async. So when I again check the Solution Explorer, when we check our models and when we check this recipe, you can see that these are children. This is a child here. We also have this. So we can have access to the procedures here. We can also have access to this origin as well. Okay, and that is what this means. Aside from that, we check if the count is equal to 0. It means you have no data. They want to return now. Else, you want to return the results, convert it to list, and I'll return it. Okay, now the last but not least is get recipe async. So get a specific recipe. Okay, so get a specific recipe by ID. So we're going to check it and return the result. And now the last one for this interface is get recipe by origin ID. So get recipe by origin ID, and passing the origin ID here, we make a search here, and I can see from here to using the same thing, get all with children async. We check if the ID is okay. Then here we set this recursive to true, so that I can just loop in through it and I get the whole data that we want for us. All right, that is for this recipe. Let me minimize this, and now let's talk about the last one, the last class or service class that we need to create, and that's going to be the procedure. So for this procedure, this is what we are doing. Let me just grab from this end. So in here, let me paste this. Now you see this, there's the add, this update, the same steps, and I can see from here that is delete, and this is get procedure async. So we get all procedures. And now the last but not least is we have other two methods addition to what we have in there. Now these are the methods. The first one, you can see that we have get procedures async. Now it seems almost these are the same, so this and that is the same, but you see from here that we are specifying the ID. So this is get procedure and this is get procedures. So get a specific procedure, add the ID, and now here get all procedures with the recipe ID. So passing the ID of a recipe here or an origin, okay, and by passing the ID of a recipe, and you're going to have all data, all procedures related to that specific recipe. So these are services that you have now. Now let's save this. Now once you are done with this, the next thing that we need to do here is we have to register our service inside the MauiProgram.cs file. So we go back to this Solution Explorer, MauiProgram.cs file, and now where we have this build beneath it, let's paste in this. So builder.services.add the interface and its related class or implementation class. So these are the things that we are adding. So this can be work anytime that we call or can be injected and now being used. All right. So now we up to this stage. The next thing that we can do here is we have to create our views and our model. Now we're going to create 3 views here, and that's going to be the first one going to be maybe a recipe view. We're going to have origin view, and we're going to have this procedure view. Aside from creating all these views, we have to also create a view model to each of the views that have been created, because view model looks like a code behind file, and that is where all our methods are going to be handled there. All our user input is going to be handled in there. So we have to create separate model for each of these objects specified in there. Okay, so let's save this, and the next thing that we're going to do here is we are going to create our views and our view models. So in order to organize our work, let's click on Solution Explorer. Now let's click and add a new folder, and on this folder we're going to name it as views, and we add another one, and that's going to be view models. So view models, since this is a mini project, I don't want to go far. This is going to be a mini project, so you wanted to finish it quick. We shouldn't spend almost that 1 hour, so let's try our best and see what we can do. All right, so we have our views. Now the first view that I want to create here is going to be the, let's say, the origin view, because that's the first thing that we created, isn't it? So let's have a look at this origin page. So let's right click on views, and now let's add a new item, and it's going to be a content page. So select.net Maui content page.xaml, and now here we're going to say that this is origin page. Okay, now once we have this, it means we have to create our view model as well. So let's go to our view model, and now let's create this class, and I will name this as origin page view model. Okay, so now we have this. What I need to do here is let's go to this origin page, and I right click here and go to this view code, and then here we are going to inject this here. Okay, so we can get into the constructor for this origin page. So to inject that, it is very simple too. We can just, let's see, I want us to just grab what I have in here straight ahead, and now paste it over there, And now we are going for this origin. So origin page.xml. And now this is what I'm going to do. So let me just paste this here. Okay. So you can see we have this origin page and we inject it over here. And now we create a constructor here whereby we initialize it, we bind it to the context. And now with this, you're going to be calling a method here when the page loads. That is the reason why we need to add this. Now there's a method that we're going to be creating. And the name of that method is going to be like this. So load origin command. Okay. So that's why we injected this. And so we can have access to this command that we're going to be creating inside this view model. Okay, so once you have this, you go back to the page. So let's click on this, go to markup, and now in here, let's add something like the models link. So the namespaces that we need, let's add these namespaces here. And now for this, we are going to be using the following namespaces. So let me just grab them and now paste them in there. So let me highlight this. All right, so these are the namespaces that we are going to be using. The first one here, you can see that we need this view model. We're going to create it now. Aside from that, we need this SF pop-up. That's going to be the Syncfusion pop-up, and that's the namespace that we are adding. Remember that we have created we have installed the package already, and we need this input layout. Okay, and this is also from Syncfusion, and we need this data grid. So also from Syncfusion, and I believe we have installed these packages. So now let's go in there. Let's grab this origin page view model, and now let's go to solution, and I right click on this. You can see we have this page registered, created, and let's set this to public partial. So public partial, and I believe the errors are going to be solved. And I know this class has inherited from observable object. Yeah, so observable object, and this is the class that what it needs to inherit from. Okay, so when you come here, you can see that issue is solved. When you come here, you can see that issue over here, it is solved now. But you can see from here, we are going for this model. So this is going to be the Maui app. The name of this app is the demo food, Maui food. So let's paste this here, .view models, and now this, you can see this is solved now. So the default one is what we have. You can just clear this vertical stack layout. And now from this title, inside the view model, we have to specify some few properties in there. So first of all, let's add a title. I want us to add these following properties in here. The first one that we need to do is let's go back to this page view model. Now here, let's paste all this. Now you can see we need a title. We need this origin object, and that's going to be this origin model because we are going to be adding a new one. So we need this origin object, and I can see we are also creating a show pop-up and all this method as well. Okay, so this has to come in here. So these are the variables that we are creating, and we're going to be using this to display a message. That's the toast. Okay, or any message at all. So let's wait and see. Now from this show pop-up and this message, let's see if you're going to be using them. And this is a message background, header title. So this, you're going to be using this header title. You're going to be using this show pop-up. But the two guys here, we can just clear them for now. We don't want them, so we're going to be using them for now. All right, so we have this. Now let's create our constructor and now inject our service that we created. So this is a way to inject constructor. So you can see we create our constructor over here. Then we inject this interface service. Remember that we've just created this interface, so we inject it over here. And I reset this show pop-up to false. The pop-up here is going to hold the data. As soon as I click on add new origin, that pop-up is going to pop out for me to add. When the page loads for the first time, when button is not clicked, you want to set this to false. So it's supposed to be hidden. That is what all of this mean. Okay, aside from that, we want to create an object here. Now this is going to be a list, and now this list, we are going to be using it to hold the data of this origin. We're going to populate all the origins that we're going to be adding and store it over here. So we can loop through it using the collection view or the SF grid view, and I'll display them as well. Okay, now in case a selection change, what do you want to do? We want to handle it in this way. So I want to first do with the code, finish all the code, then we go for the design as well. So here we are calling this method. Now this method is part of this MVVM, that's the model view model pattern. Now we can have a method in there as unselected row data change. So we see that we create this object out of this model here, and now we are saying that when any of these get changes, we want to fire this event, and the old value is not equal to this new value. This is what we want to do. We want to call this method. Okay, so that's the manage selected data, and this is what we're going to use to get a pop-up so we can have edit, delete, okay, that features. You can have it over there. So in here, the next thing that we're going to do here is we're going to create our own command. Now the first command we're going to click on, you're going to show the dialog box as soon as I click on it. So for example, it's going to be like add. So add new origin. As soon as I click on add new origin, I'm going to show this dialog, and I'll set this header title to add origin and prepare this object, okay, this model with the object that we created, and I reset this show pop-up to true. So as soon as I click on that button, the pop-up is going to be shown on the screen for me to fill the data that I want. Now in case I click on save, what's going to happen? So if I click on save, this is what I'm going to do. Now with the save button, we can make several checks to see if the value that is passing is equal to what we expect, okay? Or we can this is just a demo one, so we just move on. But what we are doing here is we are checking if it is null, then return. In case it is not null, we want to check if the ID is greater than 0, it means you want to update it. Then we call this service to update. But in case it is equal to 0 or less than that, we're going to add it to this add async, and want to add this data or this data to this service. Aside from that, you create a toast model. So let's quickly create a toast model. And now this model, I'm going to name it as toast model, as you see over here. And that's going to come from this model folder. So let me just grab something from this. And now let's come here. Let's go to Solution Explorer. Now inside the Explorer, you see we have these models. Maybe I can add it to this model, or I can create a separate one. But for now, let's add this. And now this is going to be a toast model. So toast model. Now with this toast model, let's see, we have the toast model, and let's paste what we have here, and that's going to be a public one. So public, and let's clear ones that we see here because we don't know them. And you know it needs this community2k.mary.alert, and now we're making this as static, and as soon as it's accepting a string, it creates a cancellation token. And this token is going to be either true or false. In case it is set to false, it means the token is not going to be created or shown. But you can see here, default is set to true. So we set the font size, the duration of the text, and now we create this by passing in this make toast parameters as message, duration, and our font size. So doing this, we call the last method as toast.show, and it's going to show this to the screen. All right. Now when we go back to this service, that's our view model. As you can see, now we have this worked. So toast model.makeToast, we pass in this as process completed successfully. Aside from that, you can see we are hiding the pop-up. We set this object to the new one, and now we want to load this origin. So it means we have to call this origin method to load the data. Now, where from that origin, let's see if we can have it in here. So in our origin page view model, we have this the load data. Now this method, this is what it's going to do. So when they come down here, so it's going to see, you can see that from here we have this load origins. We get the whole origin from the database. We check if the count is greater than 0. We want to clear what we have, and now we check if the results coming in dot count is greater than 0. Then we're going to add a replace range. So this replace range is coming in from this refactor.mvvm helper by James Montemagno. So he created that package, and it's very useful. So it enables us to add a range of items to a list object. Okay, and I can see from here we are ordering it by descending, so from highest to lowest based on the ID as well. All right, now the next thing that we're doing here is as soon as a selected event happens, what do you want to do? You want to manage the selected data. That's what we call this method here. So in order to manage it, we can have a simple method here to manage that selected data as well. Let me just grab this and let me paste it here. Okay, so this is the manage data, and it is coming in with a new value. So new value is coming as an origin, okay, or as an object. So we check if it is not, then return. But in case it is not, then we want to display this to the user using the display action sheet. If you actually want to know more about this action sheet and Blazor and etc., I'm going to put this. I'm going to put a video in the description, so check on it. I'm going to have a look at the action sheet, the prompt async, and now display alert method in there. Okay, now the next thing to do here is we check if it is not, then return. But in case the action is edit, you want to edit it over here. In case it is delete, we display this user. You should want to do that, confirm. In case it is confirmed, then we call the service here. And now if it is deleted, we make a toast and display this. In case we have an error, we get this as well. So that's what we need to do for this page view model. Now, the whole thing, you can see this error 2 is gone. And now we can just close this peacefully as well. Okay, so if I click on this here, we have this ambiguous exception because this MVVM has observable collections, and the MVVM also has it. So the helper here has it, and the MVVM also has it. So in order to do that, you can just grab this and now paste it here. Okay, so this is solved now. Now let's go in there and I'll create our the view for this origin. So you can see we have created the view already. And when you come to this origin page, what are the things that you're going to specify in here? Let's see. So title is set now. It is now solved. So when you go to this origin page, maybe first of all, you want to have this small data in here. Now, the first thing that we are doing is, I'm going to leave this at the GitHub. So yeah, I think you can just go in there and now clone this project as soon as it is being uploaded into the YouTube. Okay, you can find it right there. Okay, so now if you check here, you can see we are creating a toolbar. Now this toolbar, we are calling this method show dialog command. So that's the command that we are calling from this origin page view model, show dialog command. You can see we want to call not that one, show, yeah, that's this one, show dialog. So that's what we are calling. And aside from that, we are using this pop-up. So you can see that we are using this Syncfusion pop-up. And on this pop-up, we are binding this is open. So that is show pop-up. And as you can see, we have this header title. So that's going to display the header, either add or update. Then we have this frame inside. We have our first entry for this input as a Syncfusion input. We have our method, or that's a property join here. So we are binding the data to this property, and we have a button here, save. Okay, now when this is done, we have a grid view. That's the grid view is going to display to us the table columns that we have and the data that we have in our table. So you can see we are using this data grid, and it is coming in from this namespace, data grid from this namespace. Remember that we have installed that already. I'll also leave the various documentation for the properties that or the views that you have been using from Syncfusion, so you can actually just go in there and now read more. Okay, so aside from that, you see we have this header text, and we want to set it as ID, and it is mapped to this ID. We have this original name, and it is also mapped to there's an ID of name. All right, so that's exactly what we are doing over here. Very simple one as well. And as you can see from here, that we set the selection mode to single as well, and that's going to make us select single item at a time. All right, so now we have this. What can we do? We can rerun this and see. We have to register this view model and view inside the program.cs file. That's the Maui program.cs file. So let's do that. And we go back to Solution Explorer. Now Maui program.cs file, let's register them here. So to do that, we can just grab that from here. Let me see if I have it. So I can just grab them. So we are going in for this origin page view model and its origin. So let me just grab this, and now down here, let's paste it as well. Let's save it. So control period. Now we have these views added as well, and now control period, let's add these views too. So this is solved. We can now go ahead and now test this application and see. But before that, let's change the home page. So let's go to the app shell, and now inside this app shell, you want to navigate from this local to views. So now with this local, this main page, we can have access to this page such as the origin page. Okay, so we have access to this origin page because we are joining the views, and we can have access to this. Alright, so let me copy this and let me paste it here. Let's save this, and let's find this application and see. So if I'm going to click on this to see in case you have any error, it's going to pop up, then we're going to rectify it as well. So let's wait while it's being built. Alright, so you can see that the app is now ready. Let's try to add origin over here. So we can click on this ellipsis button, click on this add origin, and you can see we have this pop up already as an add origin. So let's try to pass in Ireland, and let's try to add this. So you can see it has been added. So we're supposed to see the toast, but we see at times it displays for Windows, at times it doesn't. So but when trying this in the Android, it's going to work perfectly for us. Let's also try to add another one. So let's we're going to have Scotland. So add this. Now you can see it is now saved. So as soon as you want to edit, click on this, and you can see we have these options over here, and that is exactly what we are doing here. As soon as you click on this, you will see we are displaying a list of options over here. That's the display action sheet, and that is what you can see from here. So you can just click on this or click on that here, and now if you want to edit, you can see we have this Scotland. We can just clear this off and now click on save. If you want to do this also too, you can see from here edit. Now you see that it changes to update, and we can now save it as well. So let's try to update this, or let's try to delay this. Are you sure you want to do that? If yes, you can see it is off. Okay, we can also re-add it again, and let's say that's in Ireland, and save. Alright, so it is now there. Now we are done with it. So let's go and talk about how to create a view and its view model for the recipe. So let's close this, and I'm going to clear all this. So close all tabs, and now Solution Explorer here, we go to the views, and now let's create one view over here, and here we're going to name it at recipe. So .NET Maui content page.xml. You make sure you choose that, and now in here you're going to say recipe page. So once we are done with this recipe page, it means we have to create a view model. So let's see, we go to the view models folder, add a new class, and now with this class, it's going to be recipe page view model. Alright, so before you forget, let's try to register this here. So we go to the Maui program.cs file, and we try to register that. So in here, let's register this view model too. Alright, now let's bind this to the context. So we go back to the recipe page.xml file, and that is where we have to add that. So let me just grab this, and let's go to the recipe page, right click and go to view code, and in this code we want to just add this. So we add the recipe page, the view model, and we initialize here, And we're also going to call this method as soon as the page appears. Okay, we want to call this method to get us the list of recipes that we have. So we're going to create this method in the view model. Now the reason why we have all this is we have to add them. So for now, let's work with the UI. So let's link our namespaces to the UI. Now with the UI, we want to set up the title. We want to add an image control. We want to also add our data grid, our input layout, and also the SF pop-up, as you know, for adding or for updates. And also we want to have our data module also added. So let's grab this. Let's go back to markup, and in here we can just paste them here. Okay. Alright, so you know that from here, this is what you want to do. Let's copy this, and now from this namespace, we have to change it to this namespace, and this is going to be solved. Okay, so here, what is happening here is, you see, we are adding the input layout, data grid, and editor. All SF pop-up, all these are coming from the Syncfusion because you want to add the pop-up, you want to add the dialog, you want to add the data grid, you want to add the input text box. Okay, that's why we have all these. But when it comes to the last one as the control, it means we're going to create an image custom control. If you've been following my videos, I have created this control for .NET Maui, and that is what we use to display image from a base64 string. Okay, so we can do that. Let's see, the name of this is custom control. So we can just copy this, and let's go to the Solution Explorer here. Now we can create a folder for this, and maybe we can name this as custom controls. Okay, so within that custom controls, we want to create an image control. So custom image control, if I click on this, let's add a class, and this class is going to be this custom image control, and in that we can actually put this in. The reason why we are creating this is, you know that here we have to display, you want to convert the image that you're going to upload it into base64 string and now save into a database. Now you know with the .NET Maui image tag, it does not support the 64 string image directly as an image source. So that is why we need to customize our own, create our own custom image control, whereby it's going to read from the memory stream and also convert it to image source. So as soon as you use this method, we can now have the image converted from base64 string into an image source and use them. Okay, so we have this. Now the next thing that we're going to do here is, let's try to set our design first. So we go back to this page, that's the recipe page, and let's see if this is going to be solved. We see it is now solved now. Now we can just go in there and now clear this. Let's save that, and let's go to the view model, recipe page view model, and now let's try to work towards here so we can have a method and all the stuffs created here. All right. So in there, the first thing that we're going to do here is, we have to create a constructor and inject our services. So let's do that here. And before you create a constructor, I want us to make this method inherit from observable collection. So that's the observable object. Okay, from this going to k.mbvm. And now aside from that, let's create a constructor and inject our service. And we can then insert in our title for the page. So we have a constructor created. We inject our recipe service interface, and you can see we can set our title here. By this title here, we're saying that manage recipe. Where from this title, it means that we have to create a property known as title for this. So in the down here, let's paste this, and that's going to be the title for the page. Also, we can set up this image source in here, and that's going to notify or going to be used to set the source for this image tag or our custom image control that we have created. Also, we need this. We need to create an object for this recipe so we can populate the value, the properties in it or the values in there. So we can send this, you can call a service and pass it over here. So this is the recipe model, and we are creating an object as recipe object here. Now this is what you want to do. Anytime this object changes, anytime this recipe object changes, we want to assign the value of this image source to this image, because you want to get this image source auto refresh anytime the object changes or the value of this image string changes. Okay, if not, unless you restart the application before it gets changed. But I want to do that as soon as we're saying that on recipe object change, as soon as it changes, then refresh this image source, and I'll get a current image source in there, set it as the image source, and I'll display. This image source here, this image source here, it is coming from this image source object that we created here. Okay, so it means that this image source that we are calling here is going to be the base64 string, which is going to be converted. Because if you pass in this image source here, you can see when you go to the page, you can also set this as a string. Okay, we can set this image source as a string here, and as soon as this custom control changes, you can see it's going to accept it as a string here, and I'll try to get an actual image for us. So let's see, maybe we can set this as image as string. I think so. So you can see here it's almost even string already. So we have an image source string set right here. So this is a string, and I'm resetting the value of this to the value of this recipe object, which the value also is also a string as well. All right, now we have this. We can also set this our property for the dialog box, because here too we want to use a dialog box. So we can also have this property as show dialog box or show pop-up. Then we can have our header title also set. So this is our header title, and let's have our observable objects here. So one is going to be collection and one is going to be a range collection. So I've explained earlier that when you use this range collection, it allows you to add range of items to a list. If you use this collection, it means you have to look through the whole list and I'll add it one after the other. Now this range collection is being implemented by this MVVM helper by James Montemagno, and this collection here is the default one that we normally use or we all know. Okay, now let's see, when selected data or selected row changes, what you want to do, you want to call a separate method in here. Now where from this selected property, now we are saying that anytime you want to update, if any row is being selected, if a user clicks on that row, what do you want to do? You want to call this method. So where from this method, or where is this method? You want to call this manage. So I mean, as soon as I click on that selection, that line or that grid, it means I want to perform a specific function in there. So that method or that row data is going to pass it onto here. You're going to have a old value, you're going to have a new value. Now we are focusing on the new value because that is what the user has now currently selected. And now we are saying that if they are not the same, then you want to call this method and I'll pass in this new value. Where from this method? We are here to create this method. So let's move on. We're going to create that method soon. Okay, now the next thing that we are doing here is we're also going to talk about selected origin. So where from this selected origin? This selected origin is going to be when a category is changed. Let's say a country is changed. If a country is changed, you want to grab all the related recipes and display. So we say that this is the origin. As soon as the origin changes, you want to grab the new value, and now we check if it is now return. If the ID is less than or equal to 0, then return. Else we want to populate this recipe object dot origin is equal to this new value dot ID. Okay, so it means that from here we are going to add this object into the database, because you want to add origin ID to the data that is going in. Because when you check this recipe model, when you go to this module and now check this recipe model, you can see we have this origin ID, and now we are going to populate. When you check, you can see that from here we are populating a list of origin over here. So when they display, you just select any of them. You want to grab the ID and assign to this object ID, so that when it's going to database, it's going to have an ID sent. Okay, now also what I want to do here is we also want to have another method, and that is when an object changes from this, We're also using get recipe by origin. So here, this is what you want to do. Anytime that an origin changes, when you have the drop down, and I'm able to select the drop down, then we want to call this method, and I'm passing this ID. We are saying that when recipe by origin change, so when the drop down item changes, let's say we have the origins over here, we have Scotland and Ireland just added recently. Now if I select any of them, it's going to change. This method is going to call it, and I want to send that ID of that object into this method here. So this method is just to be created. Okay, now the next thing that we talk about here is if I click on add recipe, I want to show this dialog box. So add recipe, show this dialog box, set the header title to add recipe, and I'll set this object to new recipe object, and I'll show the pop-up so I can have the object, or I can have the form being filled. We have two pending methods that we need to create. Okay, we're going to do that soon. Now in case I'm able to fill the whole form and I click on save, so save the form, what do I want to do? Then I want to call this method to save the form. So save object. Now we are checking if the ID is less than or equal to 0 and the name is null, then return. You can create a lot of methods here. You can even create a separate method and pass in the object coming in, and I'll scrutinize the whole object and see if any of the property there it is null, return an error. Okay, if it is true, then we can now move ahead, and actually we create an int over here to store the results. As I said earlier on, when you use SQLite, all the output are coming with a feedback of integer, so we can store it over here. And now we are checking that if the ID coming in is greater than 0, it means you want to update, do the same thing to the origin that we did. As you can see, we are doing the same thing over here. And now we create a toast, and now we're going to create a method known as load recipes. As soon as everything is set already and the pop-up is hidden and the new object of this instance is created, you want to load recipe because either an update or new rule record has been added. So the name, this method we can call, or we can create this method to call the load recipes method, and that is what we are doing the next line here. So this is what we are doing. Let me clear this var space. Okay, so you can see we are getting all recipes from this table, and we check if object is greater than 0. It means this recipe object is what we have, the default container here that we have. This is the default container. If it is contains data already, then we want to clear. And if the results coming in is not also null, then we want to just replace range. Okay, so here we're using this refactor.mvvm helper, and now we want to order it by descending by ID. And now here we want to also get the origin as well. Okay, so we are saying that if the we want to store this over here, get the origin over here, and I will also clear in case the origin object is content the count is greater than 0. We want to clear. And also here we are looping through, since we're using a collection view, we're looping through this results, and I'll add this origin object one after the another. So that is exactly what we are doing here. Now let's go in there and create our method that we need. So we have two methods pending that we need to create. Now the first method is the manage selected data. So with the manage selected data, this is actually what you want to have in there. We've done this already from the origin side. We want to display an action sheet. So that is an action sheet that we want to display. You can see from here that choose an action, edit and delete. So as soon as the person chooses cancel, return. In case it is edit, then want to populate it over here. So we create a new instance of this, and now assign the value of this to this selected data. This selected data here is coming as an object, so it means we are mapping it automatically to the new one here. Okay, then we set the title as update recipe, and we're going to show pop-up to true to display the pop-up and the current content that we have. If it is delete, display a boolean option. I want to do this. If yes, then get it from database, so delete it, and now display this and load the data again, and set this selected recipe model to empty. Okay, in case you have any error, get that. Now the last one here, last but not least, is that get all recipe by ID. So we need to also create this method. We have one separate method here that we need to actually add, get all recipe by origin ID. So here, when origin value changes, you want to get to database and now get a recipe which have that foreign key reference to this ID, origin ID. So we can do that down here. Let's see where we have this closing. Okay, so the closing is over here. So this method is going to be here, and now get a recipe by ID. So you're going to pass in with an ID, and I can see we are getting get a recipe by ID or by origin ID, and now we are populating it over here, and now we add the results to the range here. Okay, so this is what we are doing to get the current results as soon as the ID of an origin changes. So if it's in Ireland and you decide to use Scotland, then it's going to get the ID, call this method, and I'll populate the ID and assign it to this object, and we can now have it pop up displayed in there. All right, so we have this beautifully done. The last one is going to be our image. So let's create a method to convert our image into a base64 string. So as soon as we click on the button browse image, or click on save image or save the data, we can have this image converted into base64 string. And that is this method going to do. So browse image, we're going to use this file picker. We specify only images, so either PNG, JPEG, or JPG is going to accept it. And I will check if it is not, then return. In case it's not, now we are creating a byte. Then we're going to have this combine the path. You're going to have grab the file path. We're going to open read async to convert it into byte. Then we're going to copy it from the memory stream. As you can see from here, we are creating a memory stream here. And aside from that, we copy this to array and we convert this to base64 string from this byte that we have. And aside from that, you can see we are converting, or we are assigning the object.image string to the converted image, whereas we also setting this image source to this. So anytime this object changes, this is also going to change as well. Okay, because we've done that earlier on. Anytime that object changes, we want to also set that ID also change. I believe we did it over here. So when the recipe object changes, this also must also get notified, and now assign the value of this to the image source that we have in here, whereby this image source is going to be assigned to this custom control or custom image control that we have created. Okay, so we're going to be using that soon, don't worry. Now, if we go through this, you can see that we have no error here. Everything is in order. All right, so Control A, K, D, we can just rearrange it very well, nicely, as you can see, and we can just minimize them as well. Okay, now once we are done with this, the next thing that we're going to do here is going to work on the UI. So how to create, now you know UI, at times designing UI sucks. It takes a little bit of time. So you know, as I've done this already, I have also that I'm going to just grab them and paste it, and we're going to go through. You know, at the end of the day, I'm going to leave at the GitHub, so you can just go in there and clone it, and now review it yourself as well. Okay, now let's go to the recipe page here, and we can just give a var space here. Now we have a title set and everything is working. We have our namespaces added, as you can see from here, and that is a control that we have added as an image control. Everything is working. So for this recipe page, what are the things that you want to grab in here? Let me just try to grab them, then I can just paste them here. So we are using the SF dialog, and with the SF dialog, the first of all is what you are seeing here is you can see we are using this toolbar, and that is show dialog box. So this show dialog command, that is when you want to add recipe, we can add it over here, and this is going to show the pop-up. It's going to set this show pop-up to what, to true. Okay, we're going to set that one to true, and I'm going to show it on the screen for us to fill the data that we want. Aside from that, if you set this, we have our grid. Now in the grid, you see we have this editor, and that's the SF combo. Here it is type of the drop-down list, and it needs a list of objects. So you can see from here we're using this origin object, and when any of these changes, we assign it to this get recipe by origin. That is when selected item changes. Aside from that, we have our SF data grid, and now we bind this object to this recipe object. And now the selection mode here, it is single. When any row is selected, we call this selected row, and we have these event definition defined inside this the view model. Okay, so these are the columns that we are specifying, and these are the ones that we are mapping. The mapping name have to be mapped to the specific property name that you set. For example, ID. The spellings of ID must be the same as the one that you made or you use during the recipe object name, this ID. Name, description, rank, time needed, image, everything must be the same as what you have in here. So when you go to this page, you see we have them set over here nicely. And this format, I'm not sure this format is working, so maybe you can decide to clear that one off as well. Actually, when you get to run, it's going to understand the reason why I made this format, but I'm not sure this format is working. So maybe I'll try next time to see if I can have a nice format for this. But here I'm going to use the time needed, and I'm going to set this to hours and minutes. Okay, but as soon as I pass in only hours, the first I want to have 00.00, so hours and now minute. But it seems like the first 0 gets rid of, and I'm going to be maybe 3, then dot, the minutes comes. So I was trying to format this, but maybe I'll try again, and in case I get anything, the new updates, I'm going to just put it into maybe another project where we're going to see how to format time needed in SF data create. All right, so you can see we have our pop-up here, and this pop-up, as you can see, is it open? We set the value to show pop-up. So when you go to this view model, you will see we set show pop-up to true. So is it open? If it is true, it means that you open. If it is false, it must be hidden. So we are just navigating it as like a traffic light, okay? Off and on, off and on. And you can see we have our populated object here. So object name.name, recipe object.name. We have this also is an drop down list because you want to populate the origin, you want to select an origin. So as soon as any of this is selected, we call this method selected origin. Then we can now have an ID of the specific object or specific list selected. We have a rank, time needed, description, and you can see we have a button, browse image command. And as soon as we browse an image, we use a control here, and I will set this image to the source of this image source. We set the weight and height so we can see the output of this image. We have a button to save object. Okay, that's a very simple thing that we are doing. Let's try to, let me clear all this empty spaces. Yeah, so if I save this, and let's try to also run this application and see what we have now. But before that, let's set that one to home page 2. So let's go to the app shell, and now inside of this origin page, you're going to say recipe page. So now let's try to build this application and see. All right, so you can see that it is now ready, and you can see we have this drop down here. That's a combo box. If I click on it, you can see we have these 2 countries or 2 origins here. Now any of them has no data, so we can just go ahead and now add data to this. So in here we can also apply sorting, that's the ascending and descending as well. So if I click on this drop down, you can see I have this add recipe, and I have this pop-up here whereby I can add a recipe to this. So let's try to have a recipe. Let's have a name as such as maybe local recipe, and I can just choose, and you see I have the drop down here from Scotland. The current rank is maybe rank first in that place. Then maybe time needed, we need 1 at the 30 minutes. Okay, so you can see we have it here. So here 1 at 30 minutes, and a description here, maybe this is a local recipe. You can pass something like this is a local recipe from Scotland or Ireland or any other. Okay, and it needs total of 1 hour, maybe 30 minutes to complete. All right, something like that. You can do that, and I can now choose an image from here. All right, so maybe here I can decide to go for this image, and that's maybe this one. And as soon as I choose, I could see it has been added over here. I can see it. Click on save, and you can see it is now saved. So we have the description, we have everything here set already. Now if I click on this drop down and go for Ireland, nothing happens here. But as soon as I go for Scotland, you can see I have this one data specified in here. Okay, so it means this is also working, and we can also add one more. So let's try to add this recipe 2, and we can add it to this Ireland. It ranks the second one. Time needed is just 45 minutes to finish this preparing, and also local one. All right, now click on browse. Let's choose an image from this. I'm going to choose this one and click on save. You can see it is also saved now. So you can see each of them has 1 1. Each has 1 1. All right, so this is working. Now let's go in for a procedure and let's try. So you can see that we have in here, we have the relationship specified. We can now have access to this origin, and at the same time, we can now have access to this recipe. So 2 tables, but you can see we've joined them together over here, and that's what we call this database normalization, grouping the data into separate groups, whereby I create a relationship between them. Let's have a look with the last one, and that's going to be the procedure as well. So let's clear everything from here, and let's go to our Solution Explorer. Now in here, we're going to create a view, and that's going to be this new item. And now this new item, we're going to say that there's going to be a procedure page. So in here, .NET content page, and now it's going to be procedure page.xml. And in here, aside from that, we need to also create its respective view model. So go to the view models folder, right click on this, add new class, and now that's going to be respective procedure page view model. And now after doing this, we have to go to this my program.cs file. Now let's try to register before you forget. So in here, we can just grab that and we go back to Solution Explorer, my program.cs file, and we can just paste in this to register this peacefully. Now we are done. Let's go and add the namespaces that we need into the recipe page, and that's the procedure page. So we go to the procedure page and let's specify title, also the image control, our editor for this combo box, and also we only need a data grid, and also an input and an SF pop-up, whereby we need our namespace view model as well. So let's go to our procedure page in here, and on top here, this is what we're going to do. So we can clear everything from this side, and let's paste this. So let's arrange them well. And now what we need to do here is let's copy the project name, and let's try to just replace them in here. And you know, we have this custom control created already, so it's going to use that. And then we have our view model also created, so we're going to also use that as well. Title needs to be created as observable property object. So in here, that's what we're going to do. Now let's go to the view code. Now let's try to bind this content to the view model. So we can do that and so call a method, and since the page loads, we want to load the current data that we have to the screen. So we can do that by using injecting a procedure page view model, and also call this method load procedures command. So this command is yet to be created, so we're going to do that soon. All right, now they say that we have the inconsistent accessibility. So let's say it means we have to create or specify this view model. You know, this is supposed to be public partial, so we're going to do that soon, and that's going to get rid of that error. All right, so let's navigate to this page, procedure page view model, and as we are in here, the first thing that we're going to do here is we have to specify the signature, that's the namespace in here. Not the namespace, the method name, and you know, this you want to make it as public partial class, and as inherit from this observable object. Aside from that, we have to create our constructor and inject our service that we have created or we have been using since, and that is a iRecipe service control period. We can now use this recipe or this namespace. All right, so let's have our title set up, and so this is our title, and I'm going to just grab this. Our title going to be set up here. Our objects also going to add it as well. So because we have this title set, we have this procedure object, and we have this show pop-up. Okay, so control period, let's include this component model, and procedure, let's include the namespace as well. Okay, and we can also set up the header title, and this is what we're going to change. As soon as you want to add or edit, you want to set the header title as well. Now you know we are creating a procedure. So if you want to add procedure, you want to select a recipe in there. So choose a recipe that you want to add each procedure. So meaning that you have to use a SF combo box, populate the recipe, and also add it. So in doing that, you have to create an object list, and that is what we are going to do next here. This object list comprises of, we have range collection. You can see we have this collection. So as soon as we use this observable collection, it means that we're going to loop through and add it one after the other. As soon as we use the range collection, it means we're going to add it, replace or add range, and that's all. Alright, now this is what we are doing. We're also going to create the same method when a selected value changes. We want to call this method. So when a selected data row changes, if I click on any of the row from this procedure object, I want to call this method. Okay, also if I select any, let's have this method. If I select any recipe, I want to call this method so I can have that recipe ID. And recipe ID, you know, this procedure object needs a recipe ID, because when we check the Solution Explorer procedure, you will see it needs a recipe ID as a foreign key. So that is a way that we are doing to get that ID here. Okay, and also the last method that we need here, it is when the procedure by ID changes. So if I select an ID, if I select any of the procedure, I want to get it related. If I select a recipe whereby I want to get it related recipes, I have to pass in the ID into a method, whereby this method needs to call a service and get all procedures which have that specific foreign key ID that we have passed in. So we can do that by calling this method, and that is a get procedures by recipe. So when it is changed, you want to call this method in here, passing this ID. So we are here to create these two methods, as you know. Now let's see, if I click on add new recipe, I want to show this dialog box to the user, and I'll set it to true, and I'll set the name to add procedure. Now in case I'm done and I click on save, what do I want to do? I want to just do some small validation here, and if it works, then I want to continue with it. So you can see we are doing this validation to check if the ID, the recipe ID and the title is not null, then do this. So this was the same thing we did in the other two view models. Apart from that, you call this method as load procedures. So because we've added or we've updated the data, so we have to call a method so we can have a refresh or current data from the database, and we use this method to do that. So this is what we are doing. We're going to get the data from database. We check if the object in currently is empty, then keep on adding. By case it has data already, then clear, and I'll add a new data from database. And that's what we are doing here. Okay, so the last one here is, that's the manage selection. You know, we are doing exactly the same thing as we've been doing for the two views. We're going to use the dialog section, or that's the display alert action sheet, and I'll choose an option, and now populate it over here. Okay, change the title, and now if it is delete, confirm if you want to do that. If yes, then delete, call the method to delete it, display this toast, and I'll load the data again. In case there's any error, display this to the user. Okay, so I believe we are almost done. Now the last method that we need to do here is get all recipes, get all procedures by recipe ID. And that is when if a recipe is being clicked, or yeah, that's what you want to do. You want to get procedures by recipe ID, recipe method. So you pass in this recipe ID, and now in here, let's see, this method is supposed to be here. Okay, so you pass in, you call this method, pass in the ID, and now we set the results to this procedure object. So as soon as I choose a specific recipe, I get 8 related procedures. Okay. Alright, so that's what we need to do for our code. Very simple one. Now let's go in there and I'll create our view. So in our view, we can just check our procedure page. And now once we have this added, we are also going to add this toolbar item, whereby user can now click on it to add data, to add procedure. So we have this content page.toolbar, and that's what you see. Add procedure is going to show this dialog box. We have this grid over here. We have a drop down, and it is displaying the recipe object. As soon as any of them is changed, we call this method, which is going to affect the entire page here to get the current procedure related to that specific recipe change. Also, we have a data grid here. We populate the columns, as you can see from here. We bind the item source to the list of procedure that we have called from the database, and we have a pop-up here for adding data. So this is a title, and is it open? If yes or no, we can set it over there as we've done earlier on. And we see we have this object specify object properties title. We see we have this a number, time needed, description also over here. Now this also is a SF combo box. Now this time around we want to choose a recipe object here. Okay, so if I choose maybe a recipe 1 object, then this object is going to be populated in this selected recipe, and I'll assign the ID of that recipe to this object dot recipe ID, because that's the foreign key that we need to provide. So from that, we have this button as save object button, and that is exactly what we have been doing so far. All right, so now I believe this is set. What we can do here is we can now save this, and we can just see. Let's just check this. So recipe page or procedure page, copy this. Let's go to this Solution Explorer. Now you can see we have this shared XML. Now let's change this to recipe page, our procedure page. Let's save that, and now let's run this again and see if everything is set. But have we registered this in the my program.cs file? Yeah, we've done that. So let's run this and see. So you can see that here too we have this set, and currently if I have this drop down, you see we have these 2 recipes here, but there's no procedure. So there's no procedure for any of this recipe. So let's add procedure to that. Click on this add procedure, and this is a title. So procedure 1. Okay, and now in here we select the recipe here. So I want to just look at recipe. The procedure number is 1. And at the time needed is just 20 minutes. Also the description here, it is maybe put on fire. Maybe that's the first one. Click on save, and I can see it is now saved. Let's add another one. So that's going to be procedure number 2, and it is the same local recipe. Okay, so make sure you select it. The title here is maybe stir up, and let's see, specified time is just 10 or 5 seconds, so 0.5, and the procedure, the description here is, so stir it up for maybe for 5 seconds. All right, so click on save. Now you can see it is now saved. So if I click on local recipe, I have the 2 over here. If I click on recipe 2, there's no data in there, meaning there's no procedure related to this recipe. So let's add one of these also so we can understand it well. So let's say this is procedure 1, 2, and now the recipe that we are selecting is going to be the recipe 2, and it is 1. Specify tell me that we need 2 hours 20 minutes, and the description here it is let's say peel for 10 minutes or etc. Okay, so we save that, and like you see we have it over here. So if you check it, you see we have this recipe name. We have this recipe name 2, meaning this is for name 2. This is local. So as soon as I click on only name 2, I have this name 2. If I click on local, I have only local as well. So this also works. Now if I click on this, I have this pop-up. If I click on edit this, because I have this edit, I can now go to 1, 2. I can add that, click on save, and I can see it has been added here 1, 2. If I click on this and I want to delay this, so it tells you, are you sure you want to do this? If I click on yes, you can see it is also off. So it means our procedure is also working. Now we have here is we have to create one interface whereby a user can see all the images or the food recipe that have been added to the database, and as soon as the person clicks on it, it can navigate the person to a page whereby the person can see the that is the steps, okay, with the image and the description, the title and everything. So let's close that, and now let's do that one as well. So let's create another one. So I'm going to clear all this, and now we go back to Solution Explorer, and now in here where we have our views, let's create one view also, and now I'm going to name this as homepage.net Maui, and now here is going to be a home page. Now inside this home page, what are the things that we need to do? First of all, we are also going to create a constructor for this, and now inject this. So control period, let's click on view code, and now here let's inject all this. We're also going to create a method like this and at the view model too to do that. Okay, now let's go back to, let's create the view model. So let's grab this, and I can now go to solution, view models. Now right click this, add a new class, and a home page view model, and in here what are the things that we need to do? First of all, let's make sure this has been linked to the view. So home page here, then let's clear this vertical layout, and let's try to add some namespaces that you're going to be using. For example, we're going to use the title, the models, also the data type, and then the view model, and also the control. So let's grab this, and now in here you can just paste them here. Okay, so let's copy this name and let's change this to that, and let's change this also to the same, and this to that. Okay, now we have this home page view model. We need to create that, so we've created that already. Now what you're going to do here is let's register them before you forget. So I'm going to go to this my program.cs file, and now let's paste this here. Okay, so now we have this set. What's the next thing that we're going to do? Let's create let's have a look at this home page view model. So the home page view model, we are creating a simple one, and that is it. So I'm going to just grab this, and now let's go to the home page view model. So with this, I can just replace it with this simple code. Let me clear the whole thing from the top. Now you can see it is inheriting from this observable object. We inject our service, as you know already, and also we set our title, and I'm going to use this attribute over here from this community toolkit, and I'm creating a list of objects. So with this is the recipe object that we need. We have a relay command also as well, and I believe we need to use this input object observable range collection. We need to use this MVVM helper too as well. Okay, now load data. We get the data from database, and then we add range to the object here specified. Now if I click on go details, it means I want to create a navigation property, and we specify this object here, and we set it to this model. So this is going to be a property or a content page name where we're going to accept the input coming in from this page and now display it to the user. All right, so before we create this component, let's have a UI first set. So inside our homepage.xml, you want to have a simple UI set. So you're going to display a collection view, and I'm going to copy that. So homepage. Now in here, let's have a collection view like this, and it is bound to this recipe object. In case we are using the frame gesture, so in case that specific frame is being clicked or is being tapped, you want to call this method, go to details command, and then the parameter that you're passing in here, it is an dot. Dot means referring to the current model. So you see from here that you have this data type model as recipe. So the current recipe data is what we are referring to, and we display it to the user. Now here we set up our display options. So we are displaying the name and the description, and you can see we have our image somewhere. Do you have an image? No, we are not having any. Yeah, we have an image. So using a custom control, we have an image displayed over here. Okay, so now this is set. What can we do? Let's go in there to this home page, and our control period, let's inject the namespace into this, and we check our view model. Everything is set. The one left here is this page that we need to also create. So let's copy this and let's go back to this view model. And now with this view model, right click, and now let's add a class, and now let's paste this. So here it's supposed to be page. So let's add this view model. Okay, so read recipe details page view model. Let's add that, but let's add this to the page too. So new item and .NET Maui content page, and now in here we are talking about recipe read recipe detail page.xml. Okay, so now we have this set. What can we do? Let's try to register that first and see. So in here, before we do that, we have this page that we have created. This view, we've created the view, right? So with the view, let's also specify some few namespaces in there. So these are the namespaces that you want, because from this view, you want to see the details of everything from this. If the person want to see everything contain this recipe, we can see that. So let's copy this, and now where we have this, let's replace them here. Okay, so now we have this view model that we need to create, and we have created that already. And the next thing is we have to create this title, set it up in the program that is a view model. So we're going to do that soon. Now before that, we have our read recipe, and we can just copy this and then display it to the user as well. As soon as the person clicks on it, and it returns you this page. Okay, now that's what we are doing. We want to display the image of that item, and also we want to set up the name, the description, the origin name, the procedure, the number, the title, and the description. So we are displaying all the stacks from the data and put it over here. Now when we get to the procedure, you can see the procedure is also a list. So we are using the collection view inside this collection view. So it is the collection view that we are using. Okay, the first one is the stack layout, and when we get to this collection, we are using the collection view to iterate between them, and I'll set the name, that's the number, the title, and the description to the user. All right, so that is what we are doing over here. Very simple one as well. Now let's save this, and let's work on the view model. So let's go back to this view model, and that's going to be the recipe page view model. So we have this set, and let's navigate to this read recipe page view model. Okay, so in here we want to specify only a query parameter coming in, because we are sending data as soon as a person clicks on it to this page. So we have to also receive it peacefully as well. So we can do this to receive this. Okay, so use the query property, and now we are using this tab recipe. So this is a selected recipe coming in. So when we check this home page, you will see that this is the object coming in. This is the name. Okay, so here control period, let's solve this by adding the reference, and now this is the name. So this is the key, and now so we grab the key and assign the value to this. Okay, so control period, and we can include this recipe to create that. And now other property must use that input over here. Okay, so you can just clear the unused ones. All right, so this is what we are doing. We set the title to recipe details, and that is exactly what we are doing here to display the content in here. Okay, so now we are done with this. I believe we can just go to program.cs file, and now we can just create dependency injection with the send or read recipe detailed view model and its related view as well. So my program.cs file, and in here, let's see. So this is the read recipe detail page view model, and this is the view model as well. All right, so let's save this. And the next thing that we're going to do here is let's try to register all these routes, and I'll set this home page as the home page. Okay, so we go back to this Solution Explorer, and now in here where we have this app shell.xml. So where is the app shell? We want to set this to home page. Okay, so we set this to home page, and now we go back to this appshell.xml.cs, and let's register all these routes because you're going to be navigating to each of them. And let's set this to, so we go back to this that's the appshell.xml.cs file. That's the code behind file. Now down here, let's paste this to register the files in here. Now control period, let's include all the namespaces that we want, and all of these are solved now. All right, so do you have any left over? I'm not sure. All right, so let's save this, and now let's run this application and see what we have now. Okay, so this is saved now. It has been displayed over here, but if we check here, we can now you can space this up a little bit. So we can do that from this home page, and I can see we have this vertical stack layout, and this vertical. So from that, you can see, do we have any horizontal in here? This is horizontal, so we can set our spacing to maybe 10 or 20. So spacing to 10, and that's going to move this from this stack 1. So we're going to move this a little bit. So if we try to reload this, let's see what happens here. Alright, so you can see that it is now activated well. So if I click on this, you could say I am navigated to this page, and I am not seeing the image here. Let's find out the reason why this image is not. Okay, so you can see from here that we are not seeing anything. Recipe name, description, origin, procedures. We are seeing nothing from this area. Let's go through this view model and now see what we need to do. So that's the read recipe detail view model. We get a selected recipe over here from this object, and that's the recipe object that we have here. All right, and now from this home page view model. All right, so I want to check this code behind file. We haven't bound it to this, so let's do that quickly. And I believe that's going to be the solution for that. So we go back to this page, and that's going to be where we have this read recipe data.code behind file, and I can just go in there and grab this, and let's see. So I'll paste this here. Okay, the control period, let's include the namespace as well, and we bind it to the context, and that's all. And the last one here is we want to have this drop down. We see from here that we want to have this that's a flyout where we can add, we can go to manage data, manage recipe, manage procedure, home, and etc. So let's go to this appshell.xml, and now let's create a simple flyout item for that. Okay, so I'm going to copy this from what I have now, and let's see, from this appshell here we are going to clear this, and now let's play what we have here. So you see we are creating this flyout item, and I will create these 3 items in here. That's the merge recipe, procedure, and also origin. We have the home page here set already, and let's disable the tab option. So we don't want to have any tab bar beneath our page, so let's disable this as well. Okay, so all set and done. Let's run this application and see. Alright, so let's click on this and see. Yeah, now there's a breakpoint. So continue with this, and you can see, yeah, we are in here. We have the image, and we have the description. We have the steps in here. So we have only one step. That's step 1, and that's the procedure 1. So the description is peel it for 10 minutes. Now you can just go back here and choose the next one, and you can see we have this step 2 over here, stir it up, or etc. Yeah. So that is it for this video. Now I'm going to put this on the GitHub, so you can just go in there, clone it, and review it yourself. Now let's try. Maybe you're asking, can we run this in the Android? Yes, of course we can do that. Okay, so we can just click on this and now choose the Android framework, Android emulator, and I'll try to run this. So I'm going to leave this source code over there, so you can just go in there and grab them as well. Also, I have this web app demo with the same topic here. So if you want to know how to use Blazor to create the same thing as you've done, check the description. I'm going to leave the link over there. You can just click on that to watch that video as well. Okay, and make sure if you haven't subscribed, subscribe to the channel as well, because so as soon as I upload a new video, you get the chance to see it and I'll watch as well. Thank you so much for watching the videos too. Now let's wait for this to get run, then we can see what we have now on the Android phone as well. Alright, so you can see from here that it is also running here perfectly, and I can see we have this drop down. Is it drop down? This sidebar, we can click on manage recipes, and we can add recipe over here as well. So you're going to open as a whole page, and we can now add it. So currently nothing, there's nothing here. So let's try to add an origin to this. So manage origin. So let's click on origin. Okay, so let's run this again. Okay, so we have an origin, and now we can add a name. So click on save. See, that's pop up over here. Yeah, so it means that this is working perfectly as expected. Now when you go back to this maybe recipes, you can just go in there and now add a recipe in here. Add recipe. Let's see, the reason it is going up here, it is we need to register, activate for the Syncfusion license key, and we are not doing that. You can see we are using the trial version. That's why it is just doing that of an on issue. Alright, so yeah, we have this, the old one specified, and we can do that as well. Okay, so that is it. It is working. You can try this yourself and see. If you want to have the Syncfusion license, you can just go in there, check the description. I'm going to leave a link there how to claim a free community license key and how to use it in your project. So you won't have these messages that you see, that's an error messages on top, or there's a warning message over there from the Syncfusion it was a company. Yeah. Okay, so that's it for this video. Thank you so much for watching, and make sure you don't forget to subscribe too as well. Yeah, I wanted to add a new recipe to this. We have added one origin already. I want to add a new recipe to this so we can see this we're going to create the app. Let's see. Alright, so this one is still around. Now this drop down, because we have this outline selected, no data here, so add recipe, and let's try and see. So recipe name is recipe 1. Let's choose this origin. Yeah, current ranking, that is 2. Time specified is maybe 1 hour. Okay, now aside from that, we can have description. This is description. and we can choose and for that. So maybe let's pick an image from here. Alright, so let me choose this one. I can see I have the image over here. So click on save, and I can see product completely saved successfully. So if I click on this home, I must see the product here. Let's wait and see. Let's try to reload this again. Alright, so you can see as soon as the page loads, we have the data in here. Okay, so that is it for this video. Thank you so much for watching, and take care of yourself. I'm going to catch you up in the next video.